boom, and that's a checkmate. It's so fascinating to trap your opponent like this. You feel so great, right? Well, in this video, I will show you 8 brilliant games of the King's Gambit where some really strong players lost in the opening. Let's try and learn from their mistakes, and of course, you can use these traps and tactical ideas in your own games as well. Let's start with this game. e4, e5, f4, the King's Gambit. Black declines the gambit and brings out his bishop, preventing white from castling. The knight comes out, taking care of this queen check and attacking this pawn. Black defends it, and then we have c3 preparing for d4. d4 is a common theme in the King's Gambit, and black is aware of this, so he goes for a sneaky idea. Queen e7, indirectly attacking this pawn. Then we have d4, as expected, takes, and eventually black gains an extra pawn with a check. White can block with the queen or with the bishop, but instead he moves out his king and gives away his right to castle. This seems like a dubious move, but he's setting up a cunning little trap here. Let's see what happens next. This bishop is under attack, so he moves back. And here, black is completely screwed up. Can you find the winning continuation for white? First, we have this bishop check. Doesn't matter whatever move black plays here. If he blocks with any of these pieces, then rook to e1, and it's a painful love story. The king is hiding behind the queen, so she will have to sacrifice herself for her love, and white is completely winning. Going back, even if after this check he moves the king away, you will still play rook e1, and after queen moves, the rook jumps up the board, punches the king right in the face, and that's a brutal checkmate. The next trap in the King's Gambit was played in the Falkbeer counter gambit, which is the move d5. White takes and black offers another pawn. This is the Nimzowitsch counter gambit. White does not take but plays queen e2, hitting the king. Black takes the d pawn and invites white to take with the queen. White goes for it. It's a check. Black can block with any of these pieces, but he brings his bishop in between. He's seducing the queen into his territory. Now what would you play here as white? Are you thinking of taking this g7 pawn? Well, white, who was a 2300 rated player, did exactly that and captured this pawn. He fell into a very nasty trap that starts with bishop f6. The queen has only one safe square, and that is g3. And finally, we have the crushing move, bishop h4, and again we have the same old scene of the lover's sacrifice, and this sweetie is gone. Moving on to our third trap, which arises out of the King's Gambit accepted line. Here white goes for knight f3. Black defends his pawn. White can't take because it is protected by the queen, so he develops his bishop. Black adds another defender to this pawn and creates this strong looking pawn chain on the king side. White wants to break it up, so he attacks this g pawn. Black says, I won't let you do that, so he advances this pawn as well. If white takes, then black can simply take back and he gets rid of his doubled pawns, and more importantly retains this solid pawn structure. But white is thinking on another level. Guys, can you even imagine what move did white play here? Take a wild guess. He went for the stunning knight sacrifice. Knight to e5. White is threatening all kinds of attacks. He can fork the queen and rook. He has this bishop check as well. So black obviously takes the knight. But then white starts revealing his tricky idea and the fun begins. First, we have a queen check. King e7 is the only legal move. Then queen f7 check. Again, this is the only move. Another check. The king goes back and queen e5 hits the final nail in the coffin because that's a beautiful checkmate. The king just got smashed in front of his own army. By the way, you can also smash something. And it's the like button. Show your support and hit that thumbs up button right now. Alright, let's move on. In this game, we again have the King's Gambit accepted line followed by knight f3, g4. But this time, white tries h4, straight away challenging this pawn. Black pushes his pawn forward and attacks the knight. Knight jumps to the center, and now bishop attacks the knight. This is the Kaiseritzky gambit. Here, black is gambiting this pawn and white just accepts it. Then comes d5, another aggressive move, attacking the center and opening up this diagonal for the bishop. White doesn't care, he just takes what he gets. But that's a big mistake. This e-file is wide open, so black strikes with queen e7 check. He cannot block with the queen or bishop because then this knight is hanging. Therefore, he is forced to move away his king. The bishop jumps into action. Again it's a check. King f3 is the only safe square. Black continues his assault on the king, this time with bishop g4 check. He takes the bishop. But just look at this king, he's dancing all over the board. Black is absolutely loving this. The knight joins the party. Knight f6 check. King goes back to f3. And finally, black finishes off in style with queen e4 checkmate, and that's game over. Alright, the next trap comes out of the Falkbeer counter gambit variation. But this time, white does not take any of these pawns and brings out his knight to cover h4. Pawn takes, knight takes, and here black offers a knight exchange. White does not take immediately, instead he brings out his bishop, pinning this knight to the king. Now look, this knight has two attackers but only one defender. Black should be doing something about this, but he just ignores and simply develops his other knight. White is over the moon and he goes after the knight right away. After pawn takes, bishop takes, he's forking the king and rook. Bishop blocks and white picks up the rook as well. You might think black is in a completely lost position. But no, he has a killer move here, and that is bishop to g4. Believe it or not, the queen is caught napping and there is no way to save her. In this position, the engine gives almost a 3-point advantage to black, so he easily wins it from here. The next trap in the king's gambit arises when black accepts this pawn sacrifice. And after bishop c4, he gives a check with the queen. A very natural move since the knight has not yet come out. The king moves to the side and then comes bishop c5. He's looking to get it done and dusted as soon as possible. But white has other ideas. First, he pushes d4 and forces the bishop back. Then knight f3, forcing the queen to go back. But black says, hang on, I won't back off. I'll stay here, protect this pawn, and I'll maintain pressure on your king side. He plays queen g4, and that's exactly what white wanted. Can you find the deadly move for white in this position? Yes, it's bishop to f7 check. You might be thinking, what on earth is white doing? Look, if he takes the bishop, and by the way, that's what was played in the game, we have this brilliant knight to e5 check, forking the couple. He also has a discovered attack on the queen, so he can take any way he wants. Going back, at this point, even if black realizes that he's in trouble and plays something like king f8, then you have h3 attacking the queen. Surprisingly, she only has one safe square to go. Now we can bring out the other knight. If black tries to be greedy and takes the bishop, then we have the lethal move, knight to e2. g6 is the only safe square for this queen. Again, we have knight to e5, and now no one can save this damsel in distress. As per the engine, white has more than a 7-point advantage in this position, so he easily wins it from here. Moving on to trap number 7. This game starts with the Falkbeer counter gambit d5. Knight comes out, black takes and white takes back. Now the bishop comes out covering this diagonal. Knight is developed, attacking the center. Black defends it. White attacks it again with the queen, but that's not the main point. He has another tricky idea which you will see soon. Knight c6, offering to exchange knights, and now white reveals his trick. Knight takes on f7, forking the queen and rook. If black takes with the king, then after this queen check, he gobbles up the bishop, ending up with a clear pawn advantage and also an exposed king to attack. Therefore, in this position, black does not take the knight. Instead, he saves his queen. White happily takes the rook, but now black has a deadly plan. Knight d4, going after the queen and also threatening this lethal attack on the king and rook. White wants to defuse both these threats in one move, so the only option is queen d1. And now we have knight f3 check. What a move! If he moves here, black has some nasty attacks with this bishop, so he decides to eliminate the knight. Pawn takes back, and this time it's a discovered check with the queen. The boss is helpless, he just cannot move anywhere. So he's forced to sack his bishop. Black does not even bother to take it. Instead, he makes another brilliant move, f2. That's again a check. King f1 is the only legal move. And now it's a mate in 1. Can you find it? Yes, it's bishop to h3, and that's a beautiful checkmate. Let's check out the next game between two top-rated players, Igor Efimov and David Bronstein. The game starts with the King's Gambit accepted variation. Then knight f3 covers h4. Then knight f6 attacks e4. White pushes forward. The knight moves to the side, also defending this pawn. The other knight comes out and then pawn d6. Black wants to do something about this powerful central pawn, so he offers an exchange. White simply brings out his bishop. Black takes and white recaptures. This is actually the turning point of the game. Let's see how. Look, you might think that white is doing great because he's ready to attack this weak f7 square. But this knight e5 move has also made this h4 square weak, so the queen jumps in with a check. The king runs away to this side. Black needs to do something about this threat, so he offers to exchange bishops. White accepts, and Black is delighted to see this. Actually, his main motive was not to exchange bishops, but what he wanted was to get this bishop away from this important diagonal. Now let's see how Black exploits this. Knight g3 check. Going to any of these two squares is dangerous because of the discovered checks, so he decides to go to g1. The hungry bishop pounces onto the king with a check. He has to block with d4. And now the bishop takes that as well. What is happening here? The knight is hanging, the bishop is also hanging, but white just cannot take it. Well, he tries taking the bishop because that's the best move, but after queen takes the bishop, Black has this absolutely stunning knight e2 check, forking the couple. The queen is hanging, so he obviously has to take with the knight, but it's game over. Black wraps it up with the crushing move, queen e1, and that's a stunning checkmate. Look, in this position, had this bishop been here, white could have taken the knight with the bishop, and then he could have diffused this checkmate as well. But that didn't happen, and Black very smartly trapped his opponent. Alright, so it's puzzle time. In this position, it is white's turn, and you need to find the best move for white. Do share your answers in the comment section below. Let's see how many of you can solve this. Guys,